Hey people, welcome back to my channel. Hope you're feeling good and doing good. Today I'm going to show you all the editing process of this photo manipulation that I'm going to do. I'm calling it Monster Hand. I couldn't come up with any other name. So this will be a new series that I'm starting out along with Film Fridays. I've decided to start off with another series called Monday Manipulation. And in this series, obviously, as the name shall suggest, every Monday we'll be doing photo manipulation. Now keep in mind that this is not a step-by-step guide, this is just the editing process, but don't worry, it's not that difficult. You all can just follow along and maybe learn something new. All right, now without talking anymore, let's just get to it. And also,
if you're liking my videos, then please do consider subscribing to my channel. And yeah, let's get to it.
So I'm starting with this black canvas in Photoshop. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in my assets. Over here I've got man and hand together. I'm just going to press Ctrl and select this two layers, and I'm going to bring them right to my main project file. Alright, now I'm just going to select man, and I'm going to press Ctrl T to transform it, maybe bring it down, lower it, maybe transform it a bit more, maybe rotate it a little, and yeah, here we go. So I'm gonna do the same thing for my hand, not my hand obviously. And yeah, I'm just gonna zoom this in so I can see clearly, and maybe lower the opacity a bit so I can see exactly where it's placed. Alright, so that's about right, and I'm just gonna zoom in more, and with mask I'm just gonna remove the edges. I don't want that soft brush. I'm just gonna increase the hardness of my brush. Remove all this. I think this looks good. Maybe reduce it. Yep, I think that's about right. Yeah, I'm just gonna increase the opacity back to normal. Yeah. Now it's time to add the shadows. I'm just gonna press layer and add contact shadow there, and with black color as my foreground, and I'll just lower the flow to 20, and with 0% hardness, brush hardness, I'm just gonna add a very less contact shadow, maybe bring the opacity to 50%. I think I'm gonna go back to 100. That kind of looks better, looks more, looks more scary, haunting. And I'm gonna do the same with my hand. I think, yeah, that's about right. Oh yeah, that already looks way too attached to it. Okay, now the next thing I want to do is I want to bring in my background. So this is my background. I'm just gonna drag it and drop it right here, maybe here, and I don't need this layer, so I'm just gonna delete it. So yeah, just gonna increase it. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to press Ctrl U to bring up the hue and saturation, and I'm gonna desaturate it completely. And another thing that I'm gonna do is hit Ctrl M to bring up the curves adjustment layer, and I'm just gonna darken it, maybe add some more. looks about right. And maybe just go back to hue and saturation and you know, maybe just, yeah, I think that maybe, yeah. This thing keeps on popping up. Okay, what is it? Yeah, so just press OK. There. Alright, so now the another thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to filter and maybe blur out, just to give it that depth feeling. I think 5 is perfectly fine. Now if you come back to our original layer, here is our main image. So yeah, and another thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to the man layer and I'm gonna do the exact same thing. I'm gonna use curves to maybe darken it more and, you know, give it that contrast and that clarity. And maybe I'll do the same for hand. To give it that darkness and more intense feel to it. Alright, and here is it. Okay, I'm just gonna save this monster hand. Alright. Now another thing I want to do is I'm gonna bring in another layer for the background. I'm just gonna select this and bring it in here. Not sorry, just gonna, yeah, maybe like this here, and I'm gonna set this to screen blend mode and maybe bring down the fill to 50%. That looks good. Okay, all right, so I think I'm gonna make some changes right now. I actually maybe I'll bring the hue all the way down. Yeah, I like it all the way down. And maybe go to curves and just maybe add a bit more contrast. Yeah, something like, yeah, the S. Yeah, it looks good. And the Gaussian blur is giving it that, you know, depth that we needed. Okay, now another thing, I'm gonna bring this back to 100%. I think 100% is actually better. And I'm gonna create a new layer right above our dark forest background layer, and I'm just gonna hit, you know, shadows with large brush size, 20% flow and 0% hardness. I'm just gonna create a bit of shadow, maybe to give it another that sort of depth that I'm looking at. I'm gonna create another layer above our smoke and ashes layer and call this shadow 2. Just gonna give it maybe reduce the overall fill to around, let's say, 50. Where's this one? Yeah, let's keep this 50 as well. Here we go. I think it kind of adds that, you know, a bit of depth, like that distance that we are looking for. All right. Now one more thing, not one more, you know, I'm gonna do another thing is that I'm gonna add one more shadow, maybe above our man, and I'm gonna clip it to our man. Not clip, but yeah, we'll call this foreground shadow. All right, and with the brush I'm just gonna maybe just a tad, like bring the fill down to 50%. Yeah, that sounds good. That looks, yeah. All right, now we have got our structure, we have got our basic need that we are going for, we have got that. Now it's time to make it pop, make it look realistic, and make it look as good as possible. Okay, now I'm just gonna clean this up and maybe group all this background. It kind of gets messy sometimes, so I just like to clean it up. And next thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to come back to my assets here, and I'm gonna bring this to blood images, and I'm gonna bring it right above, and I'm gonna clip it to effect, just like this, and maybe, yeah, and I'm gonna set this mode to multiply. Okay, and I'm gonna enable this one. This one is on multiply as well, and I'm gonna, with mask, I'm gonna apply the mask, and with black as my foreground color, I'm just gonna, with 100% flow, I'm gonna delete some bits here. I'm gonna erase some bits, and maybe with white foreground color, I'm just gonna maybe reveal just the bits with, let's say, 30% flow. Yeah, and I'm gonna erase from the ear part because that doesn't look that real. So yeah, and I'm gonna create another one just below, above contact shadow, maybe neck blood. All right, and with very, I'm gonna use a red, bright red, and I'm gonna set to multiply blending mode, and with, let's say, 100% brush, and with, let's say, 70% hardness, I'm just gonna, maybe I'll just use darker color, maybe even smaller. Yeah, like that, so that we can give the effect that the blood is, is dropping, and it's, it's following along the wrinkle lines of behind his neck. And I think that just kind of gives it that very realistic look. Yeah, I think this looks pretty great. And another thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna duplicate this by pressing Alt, and dragging it up right above. I'm gonna name this contact shadow as well, and I'm gonna clip it right to our hand, not this one. Yeah, we're gonna move this one and maybe rotate it, just so that we have more blood, some blood on hand as well. And I think this is looking really good. Okay, now, all right, so another thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add that burnt texture from the hand on the hands. So I'm just gonna bring this in and just maybe rotate it like this, so, and I'm gonna lower the opacity so that I can see behind what's going on behind. And I'm gonna Control T. I'm gonna press Control T to bring up the transform, and I'm gonna use warp transform to warp this so it kind of looks like it's going along the lines of the hand. All right, and I'm gonna bring this one in as well. Yeah, like this or so, and I'm gonna press OK, and I'm gonna bring up the fill opacity, and I'm gonna blend it, and I'm gonna clip it. So I clip this now, and I want to blend this more nicely, so I'm just gonna go to my layer styles, and I'm gonna come here to blend if, and I'm gonna take the underlying layer, and I'm gonna press Alt to detach them and kind of give it that blending effect. I think this is really good, and I'm gonna put this into linear dodge. I think this looks great. Now I'm gonna use mask to kind of, remove all this. Maybe 0% hardness, 100% flow is fine. With black as my foreground, I'm gonna erase from all these nails. All right, maybe here or as well. All right, so yeah, we are getting there. And I'm gonna create another layer. I'm gonna call this burn glow. Let's call this burnt texture. All right, and I'm gonna add some glow to this. I think this really needs some glowing. So I'm gonna pick a really dark orange color, and I'm gonna put this into linear dodge add, and I'm gonna enable my brush, and with 0% hardness, maybe 50% flow, I'm just gonna start tapping here. Okay, maybe here as well. I think that's it. I think we don't want more. Yeah. Now I'm just gonna use blend if once more and kind of blend it. Like, as you can see, this really adds that kind of glowing effect, and if we duplicate this, the effect could be more, but I think we are happy with what we achieved earlier. Yeah, this is good. All right, now one more thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna kind of add this really nice light source that we have here, this orange one. I'm gonna add some light there. For that, I'm gonna use brush, maybe create a new layer right in my background layer. Let's say light. I'm gonna increase my brush size, maybe more. Yeah, let's just, this much is fine. And I'm gonna go to my brush settings. All right, and here I'm gonna set the angle to 90%, maybe roundness to 50. This is good. And maybe just increase the brush size even more. And with full bright orange color, I'm just gonna tap once, maybe twice. And I'm gonna set this blending mode to overlay. All right. Maybe come back to those curves. Maybe I'm just gonna add another hue and saturation layer, and maybe bring this right below the curves layer. Okay, I think this is much better. Yeah, it's very small thing, but kind of adds that difference, that really good difference. Okay. So now what we need, since now that we have got our source light behind the subject, we need to kind of, maybe I'll bring this, yeah. We need to add the highlights to our character, to our subject, and to our hand. Okay, so I'm just gonna, I'm gonna, maybe man and hand, rhythm, Okay, so let's collapse this and let's come back to our this layer, and I'm actually gonna create a solid. Okay, and I'm gonna use a really dark brownish color, the same color that we used for, you know, our glows. Okay, and I'm gonna bring this right here and I'm gonna clip it to the man. I'm gonna put this into linear dodge, and I'm gonna go to blend if, and I'm just gonna, you know, use blend if to blend it only to the highlights of his face. Now I'm just gonna invert our mask, and I'm gonna bring up my brush. The size is too big. I'm just gonna use a regular, soft brush. Bring the size down, and with white as our foreground, with let's say 30% flow. Okay. Yeah, I think maybe around the hair as well, with 30%, you know. Yeah. Alright, we don't need to duplicate this, so let's just call it highlights. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna duplicate this, bring it right above our hand, and I'm gonna delete, maybe I'm gonna fill the mask back with black all, and I'm just gonna, you know, with the same technique, white as my foreground, I'm just gonna add the highlights to our hand, because as of now the highlights are white but our source light is kind of orangey, so I'm just gonna use that. Let's just change the color. Come here, maybe. Alright, and you know, just, yeah, here as well. Yeah, I think that kind of blends it well. We could just maybe 60% opacity because it's already glowing way too much. Alright, I like that, it's coming good. Now another thing I want to do is I want to add some burning particles. I think, yeah, this one, I'm just gonna drag it and drop it above our shadow, and I'm just gonna increase this and just, yeah, scale this up, and just gonna change the blend mode to screen. Maybe bring the fill down to 50%. Okay. And the another thing I want to do is I want to add some highlights here, some reddish highlights over here. Alright, so I'm just going to change my color to maybe, yeah, some dark red. And I'm going to come to my man layer, and I'm going to add solid color. Right, clip it, blending mode, linear dodge, add, and let's go back to blend if. Yeah, I think that's about right. Invert the mask and brush, 30% flow, 0% hardness. Right, it already looks good. And the one more thing I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna create mask on our man's layer. Get a mask there, and with black as my foreground with maybe 10% flow, I'm just gonna, you know, delete it so that it fades in with the background. Or maybe just a couple of taps here and there, and yeah, that looks great. And one more thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring this smoke layer overlay, not that. Let's collapse all this. It's getting in the way. So yeah, so I'm just gonna bring this here and increase the size, scale it all up, and I'm gonna put this into screen blending mode. Maybe use some curves here just to darken it, kind of more intense looking. And with the fill, let's play around with this. Let's see which one looks good. I think I like 50 looks good. Yeah, maybe let's just give it some coloring here and there. All right, so with this, let's set this to multiply. Yeah, yeah, we gotta give it that. All right, now this looks great. Another thing I'm gonna add is I'm gonna come back to my assets, and I'm gonna take this smoke. No, not this. Oh man. Yeah, let's bring this right here, and yeah. Let's bring it inside, and I'm not gonna clip this one. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of give it that impression that it's coming right from his mouth. So I'm gonna delete this, but for this I'm just gonna press Alt, and I'm gonna drag that mask from his hand so that we can apply the same mask right on this one. And yeah, let's just link all this. And maybe I'm gonna just duplicate this thing, Control J to duplicate it, and I'm gonna unlink the mask this time so that I can, move it around and do all sort of things. Maybe yeah, I think this looks good. I'm just gonna link the mask back. So when you unlink the mask, and when you can transform your layer, and the mask will stay as it is, the mask will not transform along with it. But when it's linked, as you can see, the mask is coming along with it. But if I unlink this, the mask, as you can see right here, the mask will not go anywhere. It will stay right here, and you can make your adjustments, but the mask will remain just like that. This is a very handy tool, and it can come in use sometime. And another thing I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna add some shadows to this. Yeah, maybe black as my foreground, 10%, just, yeah. I think we are done. Yes, we are done. And now what I need to do is I'm just gonna, merge all of them together by Control Shift Alt E. Convert this into smart object. Now we are just gonna go to our legendary camera raw filter. And now I'm just gonna boost up the contrast. I'm gonna go crazy with this. I'm not gonna do anything with the shadows. Maybe highlights, boost the highlights. Maybe darken the shadows. Add some crazy texture. Add clarity. Don't shy away from all this, because this is a very supernatural stuff. So, get crazy with it. Maybe add some vibrance. Maybe desaturate it overall. As you can see, before, after, before, after, before, after. That looks intense as hell. Alright, and I'm gonna close the basic, and I'm gonna come to detail. I'm gonna sharpen this entire thing, add a bit of noise reduction. As you can see, that sharpening is kind of giving it that detailed vignette. I'm gonna collapse this and I'm gonna come to my color grading. I'm just gonna do a very, very, very light color grading since we have our, I'm just gonna make the shadows a bit of very, red, and maybe bring highlights here to around something yellowish. If you can see before after, that looks crazy. Maybe adjust the luminance, adjust the blending, balance, contour effects. I'm just gonna add a ton of, I'm gonna add noise, I'm gonna add grain. That looks very good, makes it look really nice. And maybe zoom back out and just add that bit of vignette. Yeah, just very little bit. So now you can see before, after, before, after, before, after. That this looks crazy, crazy cool. Maybe I'll just, I don't want that. Maybe that's, much better, because back then we had all this redness was gone. So I think this looks really, really crazy. I'm just gonna save it. And yeah, that's it, guys. This was for today's photo manipulation episode 1, Monday manipulation episode 1. If you have really liked this, I think this looks really cool, and you can swatch this, get your, take some inspiration and start doing your own editing. And yeah, if you have liked this video, then hit the like button, consider subscribing to my channel to support me, and I'll make sure to make more and more videos like this, nice ones for you all. And I hope you learn something new every time my video comes out.